How's my marketing doing? What is my marketing return on investment and how do I calculate it? I think these days people are a little bit confused about whether their marketing is effective or not, and more importantly, how to evaluate their marketing dollars and how effectively they're being spent and what they're getting for it. So I wanted to do this kind of quick video about marketing ROI in an effort to help personal trainers and fitness professionals and studio owners and probably just about anybody that owns a small business will find some value in this thinking. So just to tell you a little bit about what my history looked like, when I opened my first real brick and mortar business, my first personal training studio was way back in 2007, and it was truly before Facebook marketing even got big or social media marketing as we know it today. So here's some stats that I still remember very clearly from way back then. I used to pay an average of $30 to $35 just to get an email from radio. That doesn't mean that we'd actually ever be able to activate that person or get them into our business. It just meant to get that contact information or that email would cost me on average of $30 to $35, or basically one per each commercial that was out on the airwaves. The other thing that we had used a great deal was, in Canada, it's Kijiji. The rest of you might know it as Craigslist, okay? But online type classified platforms. We used to spend an average of $7 to $10 to get that same email or contact from an online classified, just like we would on a radio station. We also used to experiment with some direct mail, and direct mail was the worst of them all. It was about a 0.5 to 1% response rate on average anytime we mailed more than 10,000 pieces. But that was assuming a number of other things, that the piece or mailer that we delivered was good quality and people are interested in the offer, that we mailed it at the right time so that it was inserted with all the other mail, that ours stood out and people actually looked at it, and so on and so forth. So direct mail was the worst or most expensive venture of them all. In fact, I had a really hard time investing in it because 10,000 plus pieces could easily have been a few $1,000s. So you can see how difficult or expensive this type of marketing was. And then Facebook especially came along and other social media marketing and completely changed everything. In fact, this whole thing was flipped on its head for a while, especially when we could first start delivering ads in the newsfeed. I mean, think about it. At first, nobody really knew or understood how Facebook advertising worked. And then when you could put the ads in the newsfeed as consumers, it was like you didn't realize that you were clicking on ads because you were so used to seeing posts and content from your friends that, you know, to click on an ad by accident was a quite common thing, which allowed all of us to short circuit this whole marketing experience. If you were savvy, you invested a boatload in Facebook and social media type marketing because the lead cost was low, it was super easy to manage, the response was direct, you could turn it off and on instantly, and you were getting boatloads of customers very, very inexpensively. But let's look what's happened with that as time has went on, okay? In a quick little graph, I think you'll agree with me that way back when we first started doing Facebook marketing to where it is today, this is what we're seeing. And this rise in price of social media marketing or cost per lead is continuing to increase dramatically. Why is that happening? Well, it's pretty simple, really. People are getting far more sophisticated. More people like you and I are very aware of how to use this advertising. More people are filming videos like this or watching videos like this. And as a result, when you log in today's Facebook news feed, we see ad after ad after ad after ad. Of course, this doesn't even account for all the changes that Facebook has made in an effort to make their advertising more profitable or to manage their user expectations in mitigating how people experience some of those ads or the amount of ads that they experience. So end of story, it's getting far more expensive. This is still one of the best lead sources I think that are out there. It's probably where most people are invested the most heavily, but I think people get very confused about what their expectations should be from this kind of advertising simply because they are very rapidly changing, and so many people get so dependent upon this one channel that it leaves their business exposed to problems should this get disrupted. Whether your ad account gets shut down, whether costs continue to rise, new competition, there's so many things that can affect the output of that social media marketing. So what kind of expectations can or should you expect? So first off, you know, a good rule of thumb is to try to think about how much you're spending, so ad spend, total dollars, and then what can I expect to return? So for example, if I spend $1,000, what's realistic for me to generate? So my rule of thumb for my clients has always been a recovery rate, we call it, of 70%, okay? And most often we can actually do 100%, often even better. So for every $1,000 we spend, we're generating $1,000, typically an upfront purchase, but our rule of thumb typically is aim for 70%. In really competitive markets, that might drop to as low as 50%. Now, a lot of people are like, well, wait a minute, if I'm only recovering 70% or $700, how can that be a good thing? Well, if you go back to my previous example from radio and classifieds and direct mail, this is a heck of a lot better than what we were able to attain way back then. So this is actually very cheap marketing. So most people have a hard time just kind of gauging this or understanding this, and as a result, often are too conservative with their spending when they do find something that works. So how do I get this, and where does this come from? This recovery rate is based on what I would call upfront purchase. So for example, if you're selling a trial for $50, in this example, we would expect to sell 14 of those, right, to get our $700 or 70% recovery rate. Now, these days, it's getting harder and harder to get people to make purchases online, so we're using a lot more free programs, which of course sinks this whole thing into back to that previous cost per lead structure. Which leads me to what I really want to talk about today is how do we dive a little deeper in this rabbit hole and understand what our marketing ROI is as a whole. So for that, we've got to think a little bit more. On a basic level, this is what you can do. So if you've watched any of my other videos and know how much I preach that it's important to have good financial information, you should be doing your bookkeeping monthly, you should be looking at your finances quarterly. One of the things that I have my clients do on a quarterly basis, really simply, is we look at what were your total number of leads, what were the total number of new customers, okay, in that 90-day period or that quarterly period. So this, a customer constitutes somebody that's on like a EFT or long-term agreement or paid in full for an extended period of time, not somebody that's purchased a trial. Somebody that has started a free trial or a paid offer that is short-term, so this could even be 6-week challenges, which is an offer that's very prominent in the marketplace right now, in my opinion, would still qualify them as a lead. So we look at quarterly total ad spend or marketing spend. Okay, let's say for our easy numbers, let's use $3,000, and then we look at how many leads or how many customers we generated. So let's just say that this was 300. We'll just use some easy numbers, and let's say that this was 100, which both of these are going to come out to be far higher than it's typical. So if we have $3,000 divided by 300, I believe that's around a $30 cost per lead, $10 cost per lead, sorry. So $10 cost per lead, and then our cost per customer ends up being around $300. All right, 100 goes into 3,030 times. Yes, so 10. Yep, no, that's not right. Around $30. So that would actually be a very low cost per customer for the quarter. So at any rate, on a very basic level, this gives us a benchmark for what it costs us per lead or cost per customer, but it still really doesn't tell us our marketing ROI. For that, we actually have to look a lot deeper. We have to consider what is the average lifetime retention of the customer. Okay, for many that would be something like 9 months. And then we have to look at payroll. Say, okay, how much percentage of revenue is attributed to payroll? And we would deduct that from the total amount paid. And then we have to obviously consider something for our op costs. All right, I'm just going to actually take a brief pause in this video, and I'll get you some more numbers that show you how to do that. All right, carrying over from that previous segment where we're talking we'd spent $3,000, the average customer cost had come in low, around $30. For the second half of the example, I'm going to actually use a cost per customer of $100. So I'm going to say that we actually need to spend $100 in our marketing efforts, or about 10 leads. Out of every 10 leads, one of those people becomes a long-term customer on an EFT or paid in full type agreement and stays with our business for an average of 9 months. So your retention rate might vary, but these numbers are all kind of numbers that I see pretty typical in the industry at all times. Average group training location or boot camp location, I typically find price point is anywhere from $100 on the really low side to $300 a month on the premium side. I'm going to use pessimistic numbers to just show you how this works. So I'm going to use an average of $150 per month. I should have chose 10 months for easy numbers, but since I chose 9, we'll stay consistent here. So quickly, 9 times $150 means that every customer is going to generate around $1,350 as a lifetime value, just as an example. Okay, your numbers might be much better than this, which means that this is only even better for you. So I just want to show you an example. What I know is typically 40% of your revenue is going to get eaten up by payroll. Now, if you're thinking, wait a minute, that sounds really high, it might be. I'm also factoring in paying you. Okay, so based on what I teach my entrepreneurs and clients, it's not uncommon for around 40, depending on how much revenue your business is making, could be higher, could be lower, but around 40% of your revenue gets attributed to payroll. So of our 1350, we got times 40%, which is 540. So we're going to minus $540 from that total. And then we also need to take into account percentage of revenue for ops costs. This is everything else, your lease and all your operating expenses, your marketing expenses, everything, again, could be plus or minus, but that 35% is a really typical number. So if we go 1350 times 35%, that means we're going to minus another 472.50. So we also need to minus $100 since that was our customer acquisition cost. And let's see what our expenses work out to. So we've got 540 plus 472.50 plus $100. So essentially our expenses to service that customer for their lifespan are around $1,012.50. Okay, which from 1350 minus 1012.50 means that we're going to generate a kind of net profit before tax of $237.50. Now I know it doesn't seem like a lot of money, right? But the point is after our cost per customer acquisition, now we can see what our true marketing ROI was, is that it was $237.50 for every $100 spent, or 237%. Now, I know for many of you watching, that number probably sounds pretty good, but this gives you a true representation of ROI on marketing dollars spent. Now, depending on how far down this rabbit hole you want to go, you can look at each one of your sources, because we've talked specifically, or a lot of focus today on Facebook and social media marketing, but the reality is you should be using multiple channels. You should be getting customers from different sources, and the really way to know how effective those sources are or how they fit into your long-term game plan is doing that basic calculation on your ad spend in terms of cost per lead and cost per customer for each medium, and then going through this bit of equation to look at your ROI on your marketing dollars for each one of those. So if you're using things like Groupon, if you're using, which Groupon, a lot of people don't like Groupon from the upfront stuff that they see, but truly Groupon is a great marketing ROI because our out-of-pocket spend is nothing, right? We're spending our op costs and actually getting a little bit of upfront revenue from Groupon. So if you think about it, if we did this calculation, the ROI for Groupon is probably fantastic, which is why it's one of the things that I do recommend. So Groupon, social media marketing, your email marketing, again, is going to have a very low cost per customer, right? Outside marketing like trade shows and speaking engagements, appearances, and so on and so forth. But you kind of see how this can ultimately help you understand your true marketing ROI and take better control of reverse engineering your business. Wherever you are today versus where you want to go, we can actually figure it out mathematically and know what kind of investment we need to make. I hope this was helpful and actually clears up some things around return on investment for marketing dollars, because I certainly know with my clients and a number of people I talk to, this tends to be a bit of a confusing thing that I think is a little bit misunderstood. And more often than not, people are afraid to, I don't want to say spend, people are afraid to invest in more marketing or increase their ad spend in spite of it actually working pretty well. Okay guys, I'm Cable. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, ask your questions. I would love to help you out. That's the whole point of putting in this time to make these videos. So please, tell me what you thought. Was it helpful for you? Do you have other video ideas? What questions can I answer for you in an upcoming video?